The Caribbean night was darker than any I'd ever known. No moon dared show its face, and the stars themselves seemed to have fled from what was about to unfold. Captain Aldridge's body had been committed to the deep only hours before, wrapped in sailcloth weighted with cannonballs, sliding into the black water with barely a splash. The crew had sung the old shanties, their voices cracking with genuine sorrow. I stood at the rail long after the others had dispersed, watching the lanterns extinguish one by one across the deck of the Serpent's Oath. The ship groaned and creaked in the gentle swell, a living thing mourning its master. Salt spray kissed my face, mixing with tears I wasn't ashamed to shed. Captain Aldridge had been more than my commander. He'd been my mentor, the man who taught me navigation by the stars, who showed me that honor could exist even in our ruthless trade. Miss Calloway, the voice came from behind me, low and careful. I recognized it immediately, Thomas Brennan, my first mate. We'd sailed together for 5 years, stood back to back in boarding actions, shared rum and stories in a dozen ports. Thomas. I turned, wiping my eyes quickly. The men are settled? Aye. He stepped closer, his weather-beaten face unreadable in the darkness. But there's something we need to discuss. Private-like. The captain's last words to me, before the fever took him. He made me swear an oath. My heart began to beat faster. What oath? Not here. His hand closed around my arm, not violently but firmly. Come with me. I have a longboat ready. There's something you need to see. I should have questioned him more. Should have demanded answers right there on the deck. But grief makes fools of us all. And I nodded. We descended to the longboat in silence. Thomas rowed with powerful, steady strokes, pulling us away from the Serpent's Oath. The water was glass smooth, almost unnatural in its stillness. Thomas rowed for what felt like hours, his face set in grim concentration. The air grew colder despite the Caribbean heat, and a mist began to rise from the water. Then I saw it. The island emerged from the fog like a predator from tall grass, sudden, menacing, impossible. Jagged cliffs rose from the sea like blackened teeth, their surfaces slick and unnatural. No island had been charted here. I knew these waters like the back of my hand. Yet here it stood, defying maps and reason, crowned with twisted trees that seemed to writhe in the absence of wind. Thomas, what is this place? He didn't answer. The boat scraped onto a beach of black sand. Thomas shipped the oars and sat there for a long moment, his head bowed. When he finally looked at me, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Fear, yes, but also resignation. And guilt. The captain discovered something in his last voyage, Thomas said, his voice rough. Something about this place. About what it can do. About what needs to be done to break the curse that's been following our ship for 3 years now. What curse? Thomas, you're not making sense. The men who've died, Miss Calloway. 23 good sailors in 3 years. The strange calms, the storms that come from nowhere. You've noticed. The captain knew what caused it. He stepped out of the boat, and he knew the price to break it. I climbed out, my boots sinking into the strange sand. What price? Thomas wouldn't meet my eyes. A soul must stay. A soul the sea wants, one tied to the ship by bond of command. Now it needs his successor. The words hit me like a physical blow. You're leaving me here. Stay here. He backed toward the boat. I swear to you, Miss Calloway, if there was any other way— Thomas, please! I lunged forward, but he was already pushing off. You can't do this, Thomas. His voice drifted back one last time. 7 days. If you survive 7 days, the curse breaks and I'll return for you. I swear it on my life. Then he was gone, swallowed by the fog and darkness, leaving me alone on the cursed shore. I stood there on that black beach, the waves whispering against the sand in a language I didn't understand. The forest behind me rustled, though there was no wind. And somewhere in the darkness something laughed, high and cold and utterly inhuman. 7 days, Thomas had said. 7 days on an island that shouldn't exist. I touched the pistol at my belt and the cutlass at my hip. But I was Captain Catherine Calloway, and I hadn't survived this long by giving in to fear. I would uncover the truth of this curse. I would discover why Thomas had truly left me here. And when I escaped this place, there would be a reckoning. Dawn never truly came to the island. Instead, the suffocating darkness simply thinned to a grey twilight that revealed the full horror of where I'd been abandoned. The beach stretched for perhaps 200 yards before disappearing around rocky outcroppings. Behind me, the forest loomed, a tangled mass of trees unlike any I'd seen in all my years sailing the Caribbean. Their trunks were twisted and dark, bark hanging in strips like peeling flesh. The canopy was so thick that even this meager daylight couldn't penetrate it. And the trees moved, not swaying, there was still no wind, but shifting, branches reaching, roots writhing beneath the black sand like serpents. I'd spent the night huddled against a boulder, jerking awake at every sound. Whispers in languages I'd never heard, footsteps that started and stopped with no apparent source, and always that distant laughter echoing from deep within the island's heart. I needed fresh water, shelter, and some way to signal for rescue. The forest would have water, but entering those trees felt like walking into a predator's mouth. Still, I'd die of thirst in days without it. I checked my weapons. The pistol had one shot. My powder was dry, but once that shot was gone, I'd have only the cutlass. Not much to survive on a cursed island. Right then, I said aloud. Let's see what you've got for me. I approached the forest's edge with caution. The moment I stepped from sand to soil, the whispers intensified. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. They'd betray her. She comes. The debt. I gripped my cutlass tighter and pushed forward. The forest was worse than I'd imagined. The trees grew so close together that I had to turn sideways to squeeze between them. Thorny vines dangled from above, and roots seemed to rise up deliberately to trip me. I'd been walking for perhaps 20 minutes when I found the first body. It was ancient, little more than bones and scraps of cloth. But the skull still wore a tricorn hat, and rusted buttons from a naval coat lay scattered nearby. British from the look of it, and old. How long had people been getting stranded here? After another hour, I finally heard running water. The stream was small but clear, bubbling up from between black rocks. I cupped my hands and drank deeply. Only after I'd drunk my fill did I notice the carvings. The rocks around the stream were covered in them, symbols and words in a dozen different languages. Day 12. The whispers grow louder. I see him now in the trees. God has abandoned this place. I hear my brother calling, but he died 3 years past. The island feeds. It always feeds, and then more recent, to whoever finds this, the curse is real. The island demands a sacrifice, but it's not what you think. The danger isn't the island. It's... The message ended there. The rock smashed. A branch snapped behind me. I spun, cutlass raised. Nothing, just the twisted trees and eternal shadows. But I knew I was being watched. Who's there? My voice echoed strangely. Show yourself. The whispers surged. She demands to see. Brave little captain. Thomas was right. That last one froze my blood. Thomas was right about what? Then I saw him. A figure standing between 2 trees about 30 yards away. Man-shaped but wrong somehow, too tall and too thin. Oi, I shouted. State your business. The figure stepped forward into the light, and I nearly screamed. It was Thomas. Exact same clothes, same beard, same face. But his skin was grey as ash, and his eyes were empty holes. Stay here, it said in Thomas's voice. 7 days. The captain's orders were clear. You're not Thomas. I raised my pistol. What are you? The thing tilted its head at an angle no human neck could achieve. I am memory. I am guilt. I am the island's greeting. Welcome, Captain Calloway, to your trial. Then it smiled, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. Shall we see if you survive what Thomas survived? It lunged. I fired. The shot caught it square in the chest, and it exploded into black smoke that dispersed with a sound like screaming. My ears rang as I stood there gasping. The whispers returned, louder than ever, laughing at me, at my fear, at my single wasted shot. I ran, crashed through the forest, branches tearing at my face and clothes. I burst from the tree line onto the beach, stumbling and falling to my knees in the black sand. As I knelt there, trying to catch my breath, I noticed something half buried in the sand nearby. I dug it out with shaking hands. It was a journal, its leather cover water-stained but intact, wrapped in oilcloth. I unwrapped it carefully and opened to the first page. The handwriting was familiar, elegant, precise. Captain Aldridge's hand. If you're reading this, then Thomas has done as I commanded, and I am sorry. But know this, everything I do to save what remains of our crew. The curse began with my cowardice. Let it end with your courage. Trust the island, Catherine. It's not your enemy. The betrayal lies elsewhere. My hands trembled as I turned the pages, reading the captain's final words. And with each page, the terrible truth began to unfold. The whispers from the forest had changed. They were chanting something. The truth comes. The loyal one sees at last. I looked up at those twisted trees, then down at the journal. Whatever happened in the next 5 days, I would learn the truth. About the curse, about Thomas's betrayal or loyalty, and about what Captain Aldridge had been too afraid to face. I spent the rest of that grim day reading Captain Aldridge's journal. What I discovered shook me to my core and reframed everything I thought I knew. 3 years ago, the captain wrote, the Serpent's Oath had intercepted a Spanish merchant vessel. Hidden in the captain's cabin, they'd found an ancient chest sealed with strange symbols, watched over by a Spanish priest who'd begged them not to open it. The captain had laughed off the warnings. He'd killed the priest himself and opened the chest. Inside was a strange compass, beautiful and terrible, made of black iron and bone, its needle pointing not north but towards something the captain described as the place where debts are paid. The priest's dying words, "You have stolen from the sea itself." The compass shows the way to redemption, but only those with courage to face their sins can walk that path. Ignore it, and everyone you love will be devoured by the debt you owe. At first, nothing happened, but then the deaths began. One sailor fell from the rigging in calm weather. Another went mad, throwing himself overboard. Then fever, storms from clear skies, on, until 23 men were dead. The compass pointed always in the same direction, toward this island. Toward the place of reckoning, Captain Aldridge had been too afraid to come himself. He'd hidden the compass, told no one except Thomas, and tried to pretend the curse would fade. But it only grew stronger. Finally, on his deathbed, he'd made Thomas swear an oath. Not to bring the captain, it was too late for that, but to bring his successor. The island tests loyalty, the captain had written. Not loyalty to captain or crew, but loyalty to truth itself. Thomas will seem a betrayer, but he is the most loyal man I've ever known. He does what I could not. Forgive him, Catherine. Face what I could not face, and save what I was too cowardly to save. I read those words 3 times, tears blurring my vision. Thomas hadn't betrayed me. He'd done the hardest thing imaginable, condemned me to this nightmare because it was the only way to save our crew from the curse. But that didn't explain the creatures, the whispers, the bodies. What was this island really? As darkness fell, I built a small fire from driftwood. Let whatever haunted this place come. I was tired of running. The whispers returned with the night, but clearer now. Individual voices. And slowly I began to understand them. They were the dead. Not just sailors who'd been stranded here, but all those who'd been betrayed by cowardice, crews abandoned by their captains, soldiers left behind by commanders, lovers forsaken by those they trusted. This island was a repository of broken faith. You seek answers, little captain. The voice came from just beyond my firelight. Not threatening, but sad, ancient and weary. I stood, hand on my cutlass. Show yourself. A figure stepped into the light. An old woman, small and bent, her skin like weathered leather and her eyes white with cataracts. She wore the remains of clothing from centuries past. Around her neck hung dozens of small bones strung on twine. "I am the keeper," she said. "I watch over this place, where debts are settled and truth is weighed. Do you know why you are here, child? The captain's curse. His cowardice, close but not quite. She sat by my fire. Up close, I could see she wasn't quite solid. The flames flickered through her. The sea cares nothing for stolen gold. But when a captain's cowardice leads to the death of those under his command, when fear makes him lie and that lie kills, the debt must be paid. I'm not the one who lied. Why should I pay? You inherited his command, his ship, his responsibility. The sea recognizes only the chain of duty. She studied me. But you misunderstand what payment means. This is not punishment, child. It is opportunity. Opportunity. You've been given 7 days to prove what kind of captain you are, to face the truths you've been avoiding. Her white eyes seemed to see through me. Tell me, do you know why Thomas Brennan truly brought you here? I opened my mouth, but she raised a hand. Not what the captain wrote. What Thomas himself believes. I fell silent, thinking. Thomas's face as he'd rowed away. The guilt in his eyes, he knew, I whispered. He'd been here before. 7 years ago, the keeper confirmed. When he was first mate to another captain. That captain came here, walked these shores for 7 days, faced his truths. And when Thomas returned for him, the old captain surrendered his command peacefully, recognizing he was no longer fit to lead. That ambitious young sailor who challenged him, Captain Aldridge. Yes, your beloved mentor took command because this island forced his predecessor to face the truth of his inadequacy. And for 7 years, Aldridge was a good captain, until the curse, until he opened that chest, until his fear grew too great and he became what he once replaced, a man unfit to command. Thomas brought me here to test me, to see if I'm fit to captain, partially. But there is more. The keeper's smile was sad. Thomas himself wants the captaincy, child. He has wanted it for years. He's older, more experienced, and he believes he would be better suited. But he is also loyal, truly loyal. So he brings you here, as the captain commanded, to give you the same chance given to Aldridge. To let the island decide. I felt like I'd been punched. Thomas wanting my command? It made sense. The way he'd sometimes questioned my orders, the looks from some crew members. If I survive the 7 days, you return to the ship. The crew will follow you without question. And Thomas will serve you faithfully until his last breath. And if I don't survive, then you were never meant to be captain. The curse will break, and Thomas will lead the serpent's oath. But know this, he does not wish you dead. He wants you to succeed if you are worthy, and to step aside peacefully if you are not. That is the difference between him and the cowards who've come before. I stared into the fire. Everything I'd thought was betrayal was actually the deepest form of loyalty. What do I have to do? The keeper stood. The island will show you your truths. Your fears, your failures, your darkest moments. You must face them without flinching. You must answer the question every captain must answer. When the storm comes, and the choice is between your life and your crew's, which do you choose? My crew, always. We shall see. She began to fade. 3 days remain, Catherine Calloway. 3 days to face what you've been running from. The real test begins tomorrow. Wait, the creatures in the forest, what are they? Her voice came from everywhere. Your own fears given form. Your doubts wearing familiar faces. The island shows you only what already lives inside you. Remember that. Then she was gone, and I was alone by my dying fire, with 3 more days ahead. I fed more wood to the flames and settled in for a long night. Tomorrow, the island would show me my truths, and I would face them. Not for the captain who'd been too afraid. Not for Thomas, who needed to know if I was worthy. But for myself, because I'd spent my whole life proving I belonged on a ship's deck. Proving a woman could navigate and fight and lead as well as any man. But I'd never proven it to the person whose opinion mattered most, myself. The whispers had gone silent. The island was waiting, and so was I. The third dawn found me standing at the island's highest point, a rocky promontory overlooking the endless grey sea. I'd spent the night climbing through the forest, following an inexplicable pull. The island wanted me here, wanted me to see something. The sun never fully rose. Instead, that perpetual twilight brightened slightly, just enough to illuminate what lay spread before me, the wreckage of ships. Dozens of them scattered across the shallows and beaches. Some were ancient, rotted to mere skeletons. Others looked recent. All of them had been captained by cowards. I knew this, the way you know things in dreams, with absolute certainty. Every vessel below had been commanded by someone who'd put their own skin above their crews, and every one of those captains had been brought here to face judgment they couldn't escape. Impressive, isn't it? Thomas's voice came from behind me. Not the creature from before, but the real man himself. I spun, my hand dropping to my cutlass, but stopped when I saw his face. Weathered, weary, but kind. The Thomas I'd always known. "You're real this time," I said. "Aye. The island lets those who've passed its test return for the final judgment. Thought you might want a friendly face for what comes next." He smiled sadly. "Or at least a familiar one," the keeper told me. "About why you brought me here. About what you want," he nodded slowly. "Then you know I've not been entirely honest with you, lass. I do want the captaincy. Have for years. I'm older, been sailing longer, and I think I could keep the crew safer than you can. No offense meant, none taken. You're probably right. The words hurt to say, but you brought me here anyway. Gave me a chance. The captain's orders were clear. And beyond that," he looked at the wrecked ships, "I couldn't take command knowing I'd never given you a fair shot. My ambition doesn't get to murder my honor." I joined him at the edge of a circle carved into the rock, a gateway I suddenly understood. He'd come back through it. What happens now? Now you face the choice. Every captain who comes here faces it. The island will show you a moment, a crisis where you must decide between your life and your crew's. It's not real, not exactly, but your body believes it's real. And how you act in that moment reveals the truth of who you are. And if I choose to save myself, then you'll wake up on your ship tomorrow, rescued as promised. The curse will be broken, but you'll feel compelled to step aside. Not through magic, you'll just know you're not meant to lead. And if I choose the crew—" His smile was genuinely warm. "Then you'll wake up as captain in truth. The crew will follow you into hell itself, and I'll serve you faithfully. Because the island's judgment is absolute." I took a deep breath. "How do I start?" "Step into the center. And Catherine," he put a hand on my shoulder, "I hope you pass. Truly, you've the makings of a fine captain. I'll be proud to serve under you if the island deems you worthy. And if not, then I'll take command and honor your memory with every decision I make. That's my oath to you." I looked at him for a long moment, then stepped forward into the circle. The world dissolved. I was on the deck of the Serpent's Oath, but everything was wrong. The sky was black with storm clouds, the sea mountains of angry water. Lightning cracked across the sky, and rain fell so hard it was like standing under a waterfall. The ship pitched violently, timbers groaning, and I was the captain. This was my ship, my crew, my responsibility. "Captain!" Thomas's voice barely audible. He was lashed to the wheel. "We've got to abandon ship. She's taking on too much water. We'll founder in minutes." I looked around wildly. The crew was already launching longboats. We had 3 boats for a crew of 40. Not everyone would fit. "Get the wounded into the boats first," I screamed. "Then the youngest. Everyone else holds on." "There's no time," Thomas yelled. "Captain, if you don't get in one, you'll go down with the ship." I looked at the longboats being lowered. I could see there was room, barely, for one more person in the nearest one. One more person, or 3 of the crew who were still on deck, frantically trying to secure a loose rope. The ship lurched sickeningly. We had minutes at most. This was it. The choice. My life or theirs. Every instinct screamed at me to jump for that boat. To save myself. I was young. I had so much life ahead of me. The practical voice whispered that a dead captain couldn't help anyone. But I looked at those 3 sailors, young men, barely 20, who'd trusted me to lead them, who'd believed in me, even when I'd barely believed in myself, and I knew what Captain Aldridge would have done. He'd have saved himself and lived with the guilt forever. That's why he'd been too afraid to come to this island. I wasn't going to make his mistakes. "Get them in the boat," I roared, pointing at the 3 sailors. "All hands abandon ship." "That's an order." "Thomas, you too!" "Captain, go!" I drew my cutlass. "I am your captain, and I order you to get in that boat. I won't have your death on my conscience." For a moment I thought he'd refuse. Then he nodded and cut himself free. The 3 sailors scrambled into the boat. Thomas was the last to climb down, and as he did, he looked up at me one final time. "You're worthy," he shouted. "Catherine Calloway, you're worthy." Then the boat was away, and I was alone on the deck of my dying ship. The Serpent's Oath tilted sharply, and I grabbed the rail. Water poured over the sides now. I thought I'd be terrified, but I wasn't. I felt calm, at peace. I'd made the right choice. My crew would live. That was all that mattered. Well played, little captain. The keeper's voice. I turned and saw her standing on the tilting deck, as solid as if we were on dry land. You have passed the test. Passing means I die. Passing means you were willing to die. There is a difference. She smiled with genuine warmth. The storm is not real, child. It is only a test. But your choice was real. Your willingness to sacrifice yourself, that was true. And that is all the island needed to see. The world shimmered and dissolved. I was back in the circle on the promontory, on my knees, gasping. My heart was pounding, my clothes soaked with phantom rain. Thomas was there, kneeling beside me. Easy, lass. It's over. You're back. I chose them, I gasped. I chose the crew. I know. I saw. He helped me to my feet, and I realized we weren't alone. The keeper stood at the edge of the circle, but behind her were others, dozens of ghostly figures, the shades of all those who'd passed the island's test over the centuries. Captains, every one of them, you have been judged worthy, the keeper intoned. Catherine Calloway, you are captain in truth. The sea recognizes your command. The curse is broken, the debt is paid. You may leave this place with your crew's loyalty and your honor intact. The ghosts bowed their heads in respect, then faded away. The keeper lingered a moment longer. The island does not curse. It merely reveals what is already there. Your captain brought the curse upon himself through his cowardice. You have lifted it through your courage. Remember this lesson, and there will be storms ahead. The sea always tests those who sail upon it. I'll remember, I promised. She nodded, then she too faded, leaving Thomas and me alone. The perpetual gloom was lifting, real sunlight breaking through for the first time. The island was releasing me. Come on, Thomas said. Let's get you home, Captain. We walked down together through a forest that no longer whispered or clutched at us. The trees were just trees now. Whatever power had dwelt here was satisfied. The longboat waited on the beach where Thomas had left me 4 days ago. The black sand had turned to ordinary grey. As we pushed off, I looked back one last time. The island was already fading into mist as if it had never been. Perhaps it existed only when needed, appearing to test those who required testing. The row back to the Serpent's Oath took several hours. Thomas rowed in comfortable silence. Thomas, I said finally. Thank you. He paused, looking at me in surprise. For what, Captain? For being honest. For wanting the captaincy and admitting it. For giving me a fair chance instead of just taking what you wanted. That took courage. He resumed rowing, pride flushing his weathered face. I'm a sailor, lass. Honor is all we've got out here. I wanted the command, but I wanted to deserve it. And if you deserve it more, he shrugged. Then that's how it should be. You'll make a fine captain someday, I told him. When I'm too old or too slow, when it's time to step aside, I'll do it knowing the Serpent's Oath will be in capable hands. That's years away yet. Captain, maybe, but when the time comes, I'll face it the way you taught me, with honesty and honor. No lies, no cowardice, just the truth, he grinned. That's all any of us can do. The Serpent's Oath came into view as the sun began to set, a real sunset, painting the sky in oranges and purples. The crew was lined up along the rail, and as our boat approached, they began to cheer. They knew. Somehow, they knew I'd passed the test. We pulled alongside, and I climbed the rope ladder with Thomas behind me. The crew parted as I stepped onto the deck, their faces showing respect that hadn't been there before. Even the oldest sailors looked at me differently now. Captain Calloway, said old Willis, the boatswain, stepping forward. Permission to speak? Granted, we've been talking, and we want you to know we're with you. Whatever storms come, wherever you lead us, we'll follow. You've got our loyalty, Captain. I felt tears prick my eyes, but blinked them back. Thank you, Willis. That means more than you know. And I promise you, I'll never ask you to go anywhere I wouldn't go myself. I'll never order you into danger I wouldn't face beside you. That's my oath to you all. We know, Captain, Willis said, and there was no doubt in his voice. That's why we follow you. The crew dispersed, and I stood at the rail for a moment, looking back toward where the island had been. There was nothing there now but empty ocean, but I could still feel its presence somehow. Thomas joined me. "What will you tell them?" "About where we went." "The truth," I said simply. "Captain Aldridge made mistakes and we paid for them. But the debt is settled now. The curse is broken, and from this day forward, we sail under our own power, bound by nothing but the choices we make and the honor we keep." A good answer. "Captain, that night as the Serpent's Oath sailed under a star-filled sky, I sat in the captain's cabin, my cabin now, truly mine, and opened Captain Aldridge's journal one last time. I read his final entry, his confession, and his hope that I would be strong enough to do what he could not. Then I took up a quill and added my own entry. The trial is complete. The island has judged me worthy. I do not know if I will always live up to that judgment, but I will try. Every day, with every decision, I will try to be the captain my crew deserves. This is my promise to the sea, to my ship, and to myself. I will face my storms with courage. I will tell my truths, even when they hurt. And when the time comes to choose between my life and my crew's, I will choose them, every time, without hesitation. Because that is what it means to be captain. Fair winds and following seas to all who read this. May your choices be honest and your courage true. Captain Catherine Calloway, Serpent's Oath. I closed the journal and locked it in the sea chest. Someday, perhaps, another young officer would need to read it, would need to understand that command wasn't about power or pride, but about sacrifice and service. But that was a concern for another day. Tonight, I had a ship to sail and a crew to lead. I stepped out onto the deck, breathed in the salt air and smiled. The sea stretched before us, vast and unknowable, but I was ready for it now. Whatever trials lay ahead, I would face them as I'd faced the island, with truth, with courage, and with the knowledge that my crew's lives mattered more than my own. Thomas stood at the wheel, steady and sure. He nodded to me as I approached, and I nodded back. No words were needed. We understood each other now. We were sailors. We were the crew of the Serpent's Oath, and together there was no storm we couldn't weather. The island had tested me and found me worthy. Now it was time to prove that judgment right one day, one voyage, one choice at a time. I was Captain Catherine Calloway, and this was only the beginning of my story. The wind picked up, filling our sails, and the Serpent's Oath surged forward into the infinite dark, carrying us toward whatever adventures tomorrow would bring. Behind us, the cursed isle faded into memory, its lessons learned, its debts paid, its purpose fulfilled, and ahead of us lay the whole wide Caribbean, waiting to be explored by a crew united by loyalty, commanded by a captain who'd proven her worth, and bound together by the unbreakable bonds of honor and truth. The whispers were gone. The curse was lifted. We were free.